How would you like to connect with the universal consciousness that underlies everything? Welcome to the Buddhabrot Fractal. This is Robert Manni, host of Guys TV, and this week my special guest is Jungian psychologist Dr. Harry Shirley. And it all starts right here, right now on Guys TV. You can also catch me on KCAA Radio here in Southern California, Guys Radio, my worldwide podcast, and we're on UK Health Radio all weekend long. Guys TV, Guys Radio. Thanks for your support. Okay, Guys Radio. It is the interview portion of our show, and today we've got a very special guest coming to us from outside of London, England, Dr. Harry Shirley. He has a PhD in organic chemistry and research experience at the University of Oxford. He works as a consultant now and holds a personal passion for Jungian psychology and the interplay of psyche and matter. And we're going to talk today about the Buddhabrot and also about fractals and kind of how the universe is ordered and how that order can help us live our best lives. So welcome to the show, Dr. Harry Shirley.
Thank you so much, Robert. Well, it's a pleasure to be here today, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion on my work.
Okay, fantastic. So a lot of the work leads up to kind of everything's connected and it's one universe. The term for it is the onus mundi. Is that it?
The unus mundus is
mundus.
The idea of
okay.
An underlying connected reality where psyche or mind and matter are one and the same, where all of the divisions that we see in life no longer exist.
Well, let's take a half step back to lay kind of some type of create some context. So we live in a world that's filled with separatism and polarity, and that's kind of the world we're used to. And the notion that Jung and yourself come up with is that, you know, it's really all about everything as one. And there's a rationale to sacred geometry, to also symbols and numbers and how they work. But with that said, is there a role of polarity, and is separation in our world, is it just made up?
Yeah. So separation, duality, opposites. It's not fair to say that they're made up, but what we can call them is an illusion of the ego. So the ego is the part of our mind that we exist in. It's the I, it's who you think you are. But what lots of psychology tells you is there's a lot more to your brain than your ego. For example, there's the self, which is your entire psyche, not just the ego. And of course, there's the unconscious part of your mind as well. So the ego is just this tiny part of your mind that appears to create these illusions about reality. The ego tells us that mind and matter perhaps are separated or different, when in fact they are more interconnected than we realize in our day-to-day lives.
Okay. So how did you get into the work you're doing, and what is the goal and the objective of what you're doing? Because you have a lot of it's really interesting to me. You have 3.6 million subscribers on YouTube. What are you doing, and what are these people? Because I didn't know too much about fractals or about Jung, and for my day-to-day life and what I do, I haven't seen the correlation until I went through your videos and got familiar with your work.
Yeah, so I have.
Tell us about all of that. What are you doing?
Sure.
What's your objective, and why do you think it's been so popular and you connected with so many people? And what are they looking for, and why now?
My background is science, but over maybe 3 or 4 years, I've developed a real passion and expert knowledge of Jungian psychology, depth psychology, which is really the exploration, the study of how the unconscious mind works. We know lots about how our conscious mind works, but what's going on under the surface? And of course, during the 21st century, we've explored that lots. That's what Freud and Jung were exploring. But Jung's work wasn't finished. There were still lots of questions in Jung's um, framework. And one of those questions really is, as I've already said, Jung felt that psyche and matter are actually not separate. They are the same. And one thing that Carl Jung wasn't able to answer is, well, if psyche and matter are the same, how? How are they connected? What does that look like? What does this realm embody? And that's really where my work comes in. Because Carl Jung already gave us some clues. He felt that the unus mundus, so this realm where psyche and matter are one and the same, is related somehow to numbers. But even though he thought about it lots and lots and lots, he died in the early 1960s. And it wasn't until the 80s that fractal mathematics was actually discovered. And for some of your audiences who have come across fractals before, these are these amazing mathematical images. A very famous one being the Mandelbrot set, where we see an infinite universe of amazing shapes. My work is exploring how these fractal shapes may actually be deeply connected to not just the connected nature of psyche and matter, but actually these fractal patterns are related to the ordering of the entire psyche. So consciousness perhaps is organized in these fractal-like ways. And as I say, because Jung died before fractal mathematics were well known, he never got the chance to explore this. But if he had been given 40 years extra, I'm convinced that he would have been very interested in fractal maths, as I think it is the way that consciousness is organized, and therefore it dictates the very way that we process thoughts. So that's really what my work is about.
So would that mean, Dr. Shirley, that the numbers, the fractals were there before the consciousness, that the consciousness emerges from a bedding, if you will, of the fractals and the numbers and the sacred geometry and all of that stuff?
That's a really interesting question to consider. What comes first? Numbers, these fractal ordering principles, or consciousness? Now, that's a really hard question to answer, but what I would suggest is that we look to ancient traditions for help in answering that question. I often like to go to Hindu mythology, and they have a concept called Brahman. Brahman is kind of this beginning, but before reality, there is this unified, interconnected, but formless cosmos of pure consciousness. And then from Brahman, we have Shiva, which is related to form, order. Um, so in lots of different traditions, we have this idea that consciousness is always there. It's like consciousness is like gravity, or it's like air. It's just this thing that is there. But numbers perhaps bring a consciousness into order, and that's what we're seeing in fractals. It's the organization of pure consciousness that then dictates the way that humans think about things, how emotions work, and things like that.
The now you've come across something called the Buddhabrot. There was something before that called the Mandelbrot. What are
Yeah.
these things, and what are the connection to fractals, and why is it important for us to understand how these work?
So the Mandelbrot set is a fractal. It's a certain type of mathematical image, and it's fractals are often self-similar. So you can zoom in lots and lots and lots, and you see the same types of shapes. So the Mandelbrot set is a really important mathematical image. It's derived from a very simple equation. But as I say, surprisingly, even though it's very simple, it creates these amazing amazing, beautiful images, things that look like mandalas or
Like
look like spiritual
with
art.
endlessly repeating patterns, correct?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely. You
okay.
can quite literally zoom in for infinity.
Hmm.
So we've got the Mandelbrot set, which is very well known in mathematics, and we normally visualize it in a certain way. Um, Now, I don't want to go into the mathematics too much, as this I'm sure will put off some of your listeners. But basically, there's another way that we can visualize the Mandelbrot set. Instead of looking at the pathways in the equation that remain bound, we're actually sometimes we can visualize the Mandelbrot set by focusing on the pathways in the equation that are unbound. And all we mean by that is when we plug in numbers to the equation, the numbers form a sequence and eventually they fly off to infinity. Okay? When we plot all of these paths to infinity, so these, if you like, these numerical patterns that fly off to infinity, when we plot all of them, we get something similar to the Mandelbrot set. So it's a fractal pattern, but it's slightly different because it amazingly, almost miraculously, looks like a Buddha. It looks like a Buddha sitting on a lotus. But just to remind your listeners, it's just the Mandelbrot set. It's just a very simple mathematical equation. There's no manipulation. There's nothing going on here that's beyond mathematics. Just numbers, and it's a complete miracle that there, standing in front of you, when you plot these certain pathways to infinity, you see the Buddha. It may remind you as well of Ganesha, or it may remind you of the chakra system. You see a third eye type shape, a crown. You may see patterns that remind you of the third eye chakra, or the throat chakra, the heart chakra, etc. But this is pure chance alone. And when I first saw the Buddhabrot, alongside lots of other people, I was very interested. What does this mean? And can we try and explain how perhaps there's something deeper going on here? So that's essentially what the
Okay,
Buddhabrot is about. Very simple maths, striking image.
okay. My special guest on Guys Radio, Dr. Harry Shirley. We're talking about Jungian psychology as well as the Buddharot and the Mandarot and fractals and lots more. So you say that there's a significance of the Buddharots for us, is that means that, quote unquote, the universe is not random, reality is not meaningless, and the mind and the universe are in harmony. How do you make that connection?
Yeah, well, one thing to note about the Buddhabrot, discovered in 1993. We had never seen it before on a computer. As far as we were aware, discovered in 1993. But the striking thing about the Buddhabrot is, in fact, when we start to notice the patterns and see the Buddhabrot shapes and understand them, they emerge throughout history. So, in other words, the Buddhabrot appears to emerge and manifest in art, in architecture, but it's deeply spiritual and religious up to around 3000 BC. Modern mathematical equation, as far
Mhm.
as we were concerned, but it seems to be deeply connected to certain types of spiritual and religious art. And that's the big question. How? How on earth can a mathematical equation discovered in the 90s appear so far in history? And that's really what started off my own research for me. Now, it's not emerging in just random pieces of art. It seems to emerge in art that's somehow related to cosmic order, somehow related to the development of consciousness, related to concepts um, in alchemy, such as what we call the axis mundi. So the Buddhabrot isn't just emerging in random pieces of art. It seems to be deeply connected to the human seeking for cosmic order. And that's why the Buddhabrot may be extremely significant for mankind.
Um, let's see, that was a lot there. I'm processing. Um, the synchronicity is a concept that's also very important to Jung and also to the work you're doing, and how this all kind of ties together. Talk to us about the significance of synchronicity.
Yeah, absolutely. So a synchronicity is a term that Jung coined, and it relates to the idea of a meaningful coincidence. And maybe lots of your listeners can kind of empathize with this idea where you're going around your daily tasks and a meaningful coincidence happens. Sometimes it may be, but you're thinking of a certain theme or topic in your head. You're thinking of heartbreak or you're thinking of gold, and suddenly the man on the TV says what you're thinking. It may be loosely related to your idea of heartbreak or gold. Lots of things happen to us in our lives that seem to be beyond what can be statistically within reason. And I guarantee you, almost everybody has some kind of story of this crazy thing happened to me, that crazy thing happened to me. It can also be related to dreams. So many people report dreaming future events. That would also be a form of synchronicity. Now, of course, the empirical scientific world discards synchronicity um, because it can't really be measured. It's not part of empirical science. But Jung felt that synchronicity wasn't just, it wasn't just ghost stories around the campfire. Actually, synchronicity is a principle of the universe, of the cosmos. This is real. And he was very interested in how synchronicity could work. If we're saying that this is real, how on earth could the thoughts in your head be connected to a future event or what the man is saying on the TV?
Mhm.
It defies our kind of rationalistic view of reality. Um, so, this idea of the unus mundus, this kind of metaphysical concept that proposes that maybe psyche and matter underlying our illusions are in fact one and the same. Perhaps that would help explain somehow how synchronicity manifests in our day-to-day lives. So the reason that connects to number is that again Jung felt that the unus mundus itself was ordered and uh, brought into form by numbers. And Something else interesting to think about is angel numbers. Have you ever noticed sometimes when
Right, right.
you keep looking at the alarm clock, you see one, 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 or other similar types of pattern? Synchronicities seem to be intimately tied to numbers themselves. And in the past, we haven't really known why. But my work proposes that the Buddhabrot is the ordering principle of the mind. And it relates to how the mind is interconnected to matter. And therefore the Buddhabrot is somehow related to synchronicity, and it may be the kind of the mathematical framework through which synchronicity occurs. So that's going to be a lot of future work for me.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's kind of what synchronicity is all
Got it.
about.
You speak a lot about fractals. We touched on those as kind of repeating shapes that repeat themselves at every scale. So, what is the relationship between fractals then and quantum physics and going all the way back to how the universe began? Because I know there's an interest from the quantum physics experts in fractals now, and they're trying to kind of weave it together. And then I would think, because quantum physics is about possibilities, if you go all the way back to we have this Big Bang theory, but if you use fractals and numbers and repeating sequences, does that impact the beginning of everything? And forgive me for not articulating that well, but I think you know what I mean.
Well, I'm glad you brought up kind of quantum physics and kind of the empirical scientific world, because we're in a bit of a dilemma, in my opinion. Empirical science, the empirical method is all about um, measuring what you can observe. So we make deductions based on what we can measure, what we can see, what we can monitor. Um, the problem with the empirical method is that it disregards the unconscious. Okay, so the unconscious mind is related to lots of these things we've been discussing, such as synchronicity, something we know in our experience exists, but can't be proven by the empirical method. My view is that depth psychology, like lots of Carl Jung's work, is needs to be united with quantum physicists and lots of other types of empirical science to include the unconscious, because that's going to give us the clues as to how the universe is ordered and structured, how it is fractal-like. But yeah, you're right in highlighting that lots of quantum physicists are now interested in fractals and how that relates to consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Roger Penrose is interested in lots of this. But for me, it's never going to you're never going to find what consciousness is if you disregard the unconscious, the study of
Okay.
synchronicity, how that relates to number and form and symbol, etc. So yeah, for me, that's the next challenge for mankind is unifying psychology and kind of the empirical method. And that's no easy task, but I think that the Buddhabrot is perhaps a hint as to how we could unite these different fields. We have something that is purely mathematical, but actually seems to be archetypal. It seems to be a part of the human mind. It seems to be deeply meaningful and spiritual, related to consciousness. So perhaps the Buddhabrot is yeah, that missing key, and somehow we can use it to understand consciousness and even the cosmos around us.
Okay. Dr. Harry Shirley, my special guest on Guys Radio. We're talking about fractals and consciousness and a lot more. Speaking of fractals, is there fractals and angels? You mentioned the angel numbers. I know this is a little bit of a reach, but is there a connection in how angels communicate using fractals or light codes or light language or whatever? Is there a fractalization of that from what you're understanding?
How angels would communicate with
Yeah,
us.
yeah. And do they use fractals and with light codes and light language? And you mentioned angel numbers, which people are familiar with, where you see, oh, I saw 2222 today, or 111,
Yeah.
and it usually has some type of underlying spiritual meaning to it.
Yeah, it's a really good question. In a short answer, I would say yes. Numbers is how angels communicate with us. But I wouldn't believe in a literal angel. What I would say is a vision of an angel, or the symbolic idea of an angel is an angel would be an aspect of your own unconscious mind. It may be a guiding archetype, a part of you that is beyond your ego, that is there to quite literally guide you in your journey through life. And it may be that the unconscious mind communicates to us. Well, we already know that the unconscious mind communicates to us in various ways through emotions. Sometimes we don't have control over our emotions, they just rise up from the unconscious. But also dreams. Dreams seem to be important messages from what we call the self, the higher self, helping guide us through our journey. Dreams are similar to synchronicity because they have no causative effect. We don't study them in science, but we know in psychology that they are vital messages from the unconscious. So yes, angels in a kind of symbolic way, perhaps the unconscious can communicate to us in a synchronistic way
Mhm.
through numbers. And that's certainly what people have reported. It's well known that people say if you do experience angel numbers, then it's likely that you're on the correct path.
Right.
But yes, numbers can be deeply symbolic, just in the same way that the unconscious uses dream symbols to convey a message. The unconscious perhaps can use numbers in our day-to-day life to convey a message. So, for example, in my life recently, over probably around six months now, I keep experiencing the number 69. It's driving me crazy. I keep seeing the number 69 everywhere. I had a new phone number which was automatically generated, and it had
69.
69 in it. It also had 96 in it. I generated a new Twitter handle, and that also had 96 in it. Um, every time I'm scrolling through Twitter, I'm convinced that so many of my posts and other people's posts have 69 views. Countless things have happened now in my life related to the number 69. And I'm sure lots of your audience will be thinking to themselves, yeah, there's a certain number that may be screaming out to you in your life. Yeah, so from a Jungian point of view, we could be encouraged to explore what that number may represent symbolically and what message it could be from the unconscious. I
Mhm.
think 69 is quite interesting because it's like yin and yang, right?
Right, right,
It's
exactly.
like it's almost similar to a mandala, like yin and yang. So I'm thinking it's some kind of it could be a symbol, yeah, related to kind of the union of opposites or the interplay of opposites.
Mhm. If we could we take that to the next level and talk about people? If the repeating patterns are in the numbers and in art and so many other things, could it be that there are specific amount of archetypes for people that you become one of like 20 different types or one or 30 different types of people? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we're all fragmented, really. The ego creates the illusion that you are just you. But what depth psychology teaches us is that the psyche is composed of a countless number of different components. There's the inner child. As simple examples, the inner child,
Mhm.
but there's also in Jungian psychology the idea of the inner contrasexual. So a man may have an inner feminine, what Jung calls the
Sure.
anima. So we have lots of these different archetypes that are there under the surface, in the unconscious, dictating our decisions, our moods, our behaviors, our neuroses. So we may have yeah, we may have anxiety and depression related to the interplay of different archetypes. So yes, we are all fragmented, absolutely, and that can lead to lots of suffering, lots of mental illness from the depth psychology point of view. And one of the goals in Jungian psychology really is to work with that fragmentation, and that's really what the self is all about. So the self is really the archetype of archetypes. It's everything in your psyche. It's your inner child, it's your inner feminine, all of it. And our task is really, from a Jungian point of view, integrating all of these fragmented parts of ourselves towards unity again. So we're really going through life trying to, in a spiritual or religious sense, you would say really you're going through life trying to find God or trying to
Right.
find Jesus in a symbolic sense. It's that seems to be what the theme to humanity is, this striving for unity.
Yeah, I was just about to kind of get to that. The merging, which seems to be happening more and more now. There's an openness to the science and the spirituality coming together. Because if you look at the notion of we're all one, so we're all connected, and one is a number. And then if we start looking at things and seeing, then everything is God, everything, everything, the good, the bad, the dirt, the sky, the people, your shirt, everything is part of God. And it seems like that's a very fertile area to for research
Mm.
as it even pertains to consciousness and Buddhabrot and fractals and all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because actually what you're saying there is actually so central to lots of Carl Jung's thoughts. He felt that in lots of ways modern Christianity got it wrong. Um, this concept that God is good and only good, and that Jesus was maybe seen as this flawless, perfect, divine individual. There's no room in Christianity for what Jung calls the shadow, the dark side, the devouring side. In modern Christianity is often ignored. It's given to maybe the devil, or even given to the feminine. So it's an interesting discussion how modern Christianity deals with the shadow, with evil, and in Jung's view, it was Christianity was too split. If you look to other spiritual traditions such as Hinduism, there's more room
Right.
for the shadow. They would have gods that
Mhm.
were devouring, awful, and evil, and instead of rejecting these gods, instead of, if you like, repressing them, you work with them. You invite them in. You do invite the devil into your home, and maybe you try and understand is this what is this thing we've labeled as evil? What actually does it want? How can I work with it? And how can we move towards harmony? Um, so within Jungian psychology, we never really want to reject anything, whether it's
Mhm.
good or bad, because often the bad is created through maybe social pressures or parental demands or whatever. And what we label as bad is sometimes misunderstood or only bad because of lack of understanding and things like that. So, yeah, modern Christianity, from Jung's view, didn't quite get it right. There was no room for
Mhm.
the evil, if you will.
Okay, Dr. Harry Shirley, my special guest on Guys Radio. I'm loving this conversation. I'm learning a lot. I hope my audience, everybody out there, is learning a lot also. Because what we do on the show is we bring in new thinking, new ideas, and all I ask for everybody is that my guests bring something to the show for the listeners and viewers, and that my audience and myself, we're open to new ideas, and then we decide what we want to do with it. So, what can my audience and what can I and what can you, what can we do with this knowledge that we have about the Buddhabrot and fractals and everything else we've been discussing today, Dr. Shirley?
So my recommendation would be don't try and rationalize all of the things that I've been saying. Don't try and sit down and work them out logically. I've presented you today with this new idea, the Buddhabrot. This is, in my opinion, a new symbol for mankind. It's a symbol for the self. So it's similar, if you like, to other concepts we've seen in history, such as Ganesha,
Mm-hmm.
such as Buddha, such as perhaps Jesus himself. The Buddhabrot is a new symbol for you to help understand who you are, to help bring order into a world of chaos. So, if you haven't yet seen the Buddhabrot, I recommend going on to thebuddhabrot.com.
Hmm.
Check out what the Buddhabrot looks like. Meditate on it.
That's what was my
Then,
next question. Should we be
yeah,
meditating on these
meditate on it.
symbols? Hmm.
I think the Buddhabrot is the ordering principle of the entire psyche. So when you're looking at the Buddhabrot, you're looking at a part of yourself. So go with that, see what happens, see where your dreams take you after you've seen the Buddhabrot, and perhaps begin your journey of uncovering kind of the hidden order behind who you are. Um, yeah, that would be my recommendation. But if you go onto my website, thebuddhabrot.com, there's tons of other articles and interviews to learn more. There's my Patreon as well. And you should feel free to reach out to me with any questions.
But it seems like, Dr. Shirley, that this is all about um, rediscovering, finding out who we are, not something new and different, but going back to peel away the things that aren't really working, the
Yeah,
noise and all of that, and getting down and back to who we really are. And that's what it seems like. It's paramount in terms of importance that we look at things that way and we get back. It's not something new. It's like it's something old because it's us, but we have been covered up by so much that we have a hard time knowing who we are.
absolutely. You've nailed it on the head. The Buddhabrot is all about rediscovering who you always were. And I hope some of your listeners can use that to help them on their journeys of self-discovery.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Last question. How do you do, I'm just curious, how do you do your work and where do you go with this? Like, where do you take this and how do you find people who are in sync with you and can help you develop the research that you need to take this to the next level?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. I'm still at the early stages of kind of like sharing my findings, hence why I'm here today.
Hmm.
But I have a full-time job outside of my work on the Buddhabrot. So I'm actually looking for support. I'm looking for funding, looking for people that want to be involved in my journey.
Hmm.
I aim to be involved in the Buddhabrot for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether I could potentially use it to help people on their paths of self-discovery, whether that is kind of immersion in creating Buddhabrot images, using the Buddhabrot to understand your own
Hmm.
psycho-spiritual journey, or just interviewing artists and other people who perhaps have experienced the Buddhabrot themselves as an inner image. So there's lots of different angles that this work could take. But yeah, if anybody out there wants to
Uh-huh.
support my
Well,
work, please do
well,
reach out.
you've got 3.6 million subscribers on YouTube. What are they helping you? And are you getting feedback from them that's helping you in your work?
So
And what are they looking
yeah,
for?
those 3.6 million unfortunately are not all of mine. So I've worked in the past with a platform called After School, and we
Okay.
collaborated.
Okay.
And though yeah,
Still,
so
it's a
those
lot.
3.
It's a lot. You
Oh
have a
yeah.
lot of people
And
interested in this.
lots of people are definitely interested,
Yeah.
but I'm still at the stages of building kind of an independent platform. So I don't actually have a huge number of followers yet. So
Well,
any support
where would
is
you like
most
to take
welcome.
this, Dr. Shirley? Where would you
Where would I
like,
like
where would you like to be like 5 years from now with this work?
5 years from now, I'd like to be using the Buddhabrot to understand consciousness. Perhaps traveling the world, talking to people about the Buddhabrot, and have my own research funded to understand exactly how the Buddhabrot generates consciousness. So there's lots of questions still in my work. We know the Buddhabrot's important. We know it's a symbol for the self. We don't yet know how it generates consciousness. And that's a massive question.
Mhm. Do you think, and I promise final question, ETs have a role in this and could be helpful?
No, I think the idea of
Okay.
extraterrestrial is just. I think that UFOs potentially are a projection of inner archetypes. I think they are an aspect of the unconscious. And any kind of idea of extraterrestrials is this idea. An extraterrestrial is this idea that there's something beyond you. So really an extraterrestrial is a symbol for the unconscious. So it's not some ETs aren't necessarily off on some random galaxy. They're actually a part of you, part of your
Okay,
unconscious mind.
got it.
So
Okay.
UFOs, if you like, ETs
Mhm.
are related, but in a symbolic sense.
Got it. Well stated. Well stated. So thank you so much, Dr. Shirley, for being on the show. Learned so much. I'm going to keep following you. I'm going to spread the word and keep doing the work you're doing. And thank you. And once again, what's your website?
Thank you so much. It's www.thebuddhabrot.com.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Shirley.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoy the guests and content I bring you each and every week to Guys TV and Guys Radio, please support us by subscribing to our channels and platforms. Thank you.